Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Gatewood, and I am the Communications and Marketing Director at CFRE International. And I'm super glad that you're along with us today. We are going to be talking about all things to do with how to become a CFRE in 2024. You're in the right place. You're getting a jump start on your New Year's resolutions. We're going to talk to you for the next hour, take your questions, and make sure that you get all of the information that you need to feel ready and confident to achieve your goal of becoming a CFRE next year. I am joined today on the back end by Paul Cavazos and Christine Johnson. They are going to be manning our question pane. So feel free to drop your questions in there. They are going to make sure you get the info you need. We're also going to stop periodically today and address some of the more popular questions as a group. And we will also use whatever time is left after the presentation to dive further into the Q&A. So just something for you to know, we are recording today's webinar. I will send you a link to the recording in about 24 hours, as well as a PDF copy of the slides. You will also earn yourself 1 point in the non-fundraising education section when you are on the webinar and for the whole hour today. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means and points and the application and all that good stuff. But just know that you will have a point 60 minutes from now. We also are very fortunate to be joined by 3 CFREs who are going to share their wisdom and advice with you. But just to get us started and kicked off, I wanted to let you know about a promotion that we are doing. This is our giveaway for a free copy of the 2024, so just came out less than a week ago, CFRE Exam Compass Study Guide. This is $49.99 US value. If you submit your application before midnight on December 15th, we will ship you a hard copy of this study guide at no cost. That includes free worldwide shipping. This study guide is a great resource for preparing, but also there are some online study groups for the CFRE that actually require this. So if you might be looking at an online study group, this makes a lot of sense to get your application in now and save yourself some money. All right. So first, let's just talk about what is the CFRE credential. We are the only globally recognized accredited credential for fundraising professionals. So there is no other credential that has the same recognition that is looking at globally accepted best practice fundraising and is accredited. We've been around for 40 years, so we have a lot of longevity in the space. People are aware of us, employers are aware of us, hiring managers, recruiters, especially in the US and Canada. That's where we have the highest number of CFREs, and we have a growing number of CFREs in other countries around the world. Everything we do is grounded in ethical best practice fundraising. And this is so important because if we don't assess our knowledge against best practices, we don't have a way to know if we're actually following best practices, right? We know that there's not necessarily a formal pathway for people to enter fundraising. So many people are trained on the job. Maybe they go to this course, they go to that course, they go to XYZ conferences, right? But when your learning is hodgepodge like that, and you don't have a formal kind of way to go through and assess, you can have blind spots. And when you have a blind spot in your fundraising practice, that's where things can become problematic. So that's what we want to achieve with the CFRE process, is a world where philanthropy is practiced in trust and confidence so that you feel good when you go forward in your career. And currently there are over 7,700 CFREs in 25 countries, in more than 25 countries around the world. Okay, so people ask me when I exhibit for us at conferences, which I've done dozens and dozens of times, why should I get my CFRE? There are a number of reasons, and we'll go through them now. One is to demonstrate your competence. Every other year, we do a survey to all current CFREs to make sure that the credential is still performing. The number one reason people say they become CFREs is because they want to demonstrate their fundraising knowledge and competence. When we go into a job interview and we say we're amazing, every other person has said the exact same thing that got into the interview phase, right? What is the proof of that? Have you measured your knowledge against globally accepted ethical best practices? If you have demonstrated your competence when you pass the CFRE exam in that, right? That is the proof in the pudding. Credibility, the survey we ran it just a couple months ago, and 94% of our respondents told us that the CFRE credential was valuable in giving them enhanced credibility with employers and or clients. This is your attestation that you commit to a high standard, right? That is what gives you that credibility against people who haven't gone through this process perhaps, or who haven't taken the time to make sure that their fundraising knowledge is fully rounded out. Career advancement is another huge reason people come to the CFRE. When you're a CFRE, you have earned a voluntary credential. You didn't have to earn this credential, right? That helps you stand head and shoulders above other candidates. We are aware of different organizations, different CFREs who have told us that when they are looking at candidates, all the candidates that kind of make that first cut that they want to interview, they put the ones with a CFRE in the quote unquote CFRE pile, and they begin their interviewing there. If you're not a CFRE, you may possibly have a disadvantage when it comes to getting interviewed. Also, when you're a CFRE, you can earn more. This is a really heavy reason why people also come to the CFRE in the US and Canada. We all know that the gender wage gap, unfortunately, is very real. 76% of current CFREs are women. And when you have the CFRE, you can really leverage this at the negotiating table. AFP ran their compensation and benefits report this year, and it found that CFREs in the US earn 5 to 16% more than non-CFREs, right? That's a really, really impressive salary lift when you think about what is your salary now and what would it look like if it were 16% higher, 5% higher. If your employer matches your retirement contribution as a percentage of your pay, right? They put in 5, 6, 7%, getting your base pay number up higher has a really great knock-on effect for your retirement too. And the compensation and benefits report found that in Canada, the salary lift is 14%. There was a woman I met at AFP Congress in 2021 who told me that within 12 months of earning her CFRE, she had doubled her salary. I don't think that's typical, but she showed me that it is possible. I've had other people say I got a 5-figure lift. So just know that if you intend to go out on the job search in 2024, having your CFRE before you begin applying can make a lot of sense. The CFRE also proves your commitment to the profession. We know a lot of people come into fundraising and then they go out of fundraising, right? This is your commitment. You've gone to this level. You have chosen this as your career, right? You're not just figuring it out. You're not just here for a few years to see if it's a good fit. You are dedicated to making a difference for donors and the organizations you work for. Personal achievement, this seems really obvious, but 98% of CFREs have said that the personal achievement, the sense of that when earning their CFRE was useful to them on the job, right? When we know that we have what it takes, when we know that we have the knowledge, that makes such a huge difference to how we feel about our job, right? We can take more challenges on, we can think, okay, maybe we should innovate here. We're not scared to just run the same thing, 6 years running, repeatable over and over again. You have greater confidence. It also shows your accountability to ethical standards and guidelines. So many people out there, regardless of profession, have a tendency to fly by the seat of their pants. That is not you as a CFRE, right? You're accountable. You are holding yourself to a higher standard. And lastly, recognition. We have heard over and over from CFREs that they feel that they were recognized more for being an expert once they had their CFRE. I've had people say to me, before I got my CFRE, my boss would second guess me all the time. And as soon as I got my CFRE, that all ended, right? Get the recognition that you have done this and that you have what it takes. All right, so a number of people have their employer's support when they pursue the CFRE. 49% of CFREs told us that their employer paid for their certification cost, and 5% told us that they did a cost sharing model with their employer. It's always worth talking to your employer about. If you are going to be doing your budget, maybe you haven't totally finalized your 2024 budget, it can make a lot of sense to talk to your boss. Hey, could we put some funds towards this? If you are talking to your boss, you need to have your support points in this. Remind them that only 7,700 people have this, right? This really shows that your department values commitment, excellence, and ethics in fundraising. It's a third-party validation of your experience. It's not just you saying, I have what it takes. I'm really good at this. No, you've had a third-party endorsement. You can add it to grant applications and donor conversations that you have a CFRE on the team. And we all know that ethics and accountability are incredibly, incredibly important in this age of social media and news traveling faster than we would ever imagine. We always have to be operating above board at all times. All right, so I'm going to now invite our 3 CFREs. They're each going to tell you a little bit of information that will be really helpful to you. The first CFRE who's going to join us is Jillian, Netherland. She is based in Maine in the US, and she actually just became a CFRE last month. So the process is very, very fresh for her. So Jillian, if you'd like to unmute yourself and take it away.
Thanks, Ashley. I actually became a CFRE on October 13th, of Friday the 13th. So don't let that energy scare you away. Becoming a CFRE was a big goal of mine for a long time. And thinking on the reasons why, the top 2 for me were combating imposter syndrome. I know that I am not unique when I share that I suffer from that big time. And this was, it was really a personal reason as opposed to a professional one. But really, showing myself that I could do this. But it's been more than that. As silly as it may sound, I feel like I have this backing now. When I go into my email and I start to send someone an email and I see I have those letters at the end of my name, it is a reminder. When I go somewhere and I see them on the badge, it's just that reminder that I did this and I have the backing. And it's been really wonderful. And I will say, as silly as it is, it's kind of a mind over matter thing. It really has kind of helped me keep that imposter syndrome at bay, even though, as Ashley said, it's only been about 6 weeks. The other reason I listed was credibility and connections. And that was kind of a byproduct that I wasn't expecting, if I'm being honest. So throughout preparing to take my CFRE exam, when I was studying, I ended up making a lot of connections, mostly through LinkedIn, of people all throughout the country, and other countries too, that were also preparing to take their exam. And through that, I've gained this huge professional network, which has just been incredible. I know not all nonprofit organizations, but a lot of them, like mine, we're a little siloed in that development department. And when you're head of the department, like I am, it's kind of like it's you making the decisions and looking into everything. And so having someone to really go back and forth with on ideas, like what have you tried, what has worked, there's not a lot of that. But now I have that. I have people that I can discuss the different things that we're doing to see what's worked for them. But also I had people cheering me on along the way, and that I've been doing the same. As soon as I see someone I know that has that update, that they've gotten that credential, it's we're all in there being each other's biggest cheerleaders along the way. And I just feel so much more connected to so many others throughout this profession, throughout our country, and others as well.
Thank you so much, Jillian. And we will hear from Jillian again as all of our CFREs towards the end. But if you have any questions that you would like to direct to any of the CFREs speaking today, you can drop them in the question pane and we'll address them when we get to our question breaks. All right, and now I would like to introduce to you Alice Ferris. She has been a CFRE since 1999, so next year, celebrating 25 years of certification. She is coming to us today from Yuma, Arizona. Now I'll turn it over to you, Alice.
Thank you. And Jillian, congratulations on your new CFRE. And I made a note to make sure we're connected on LinkedIn. So part of the reason why I initially got the CFRE were similar to some of Jillian's reasons, actually. And it was also because someone really, frankly, aggressively promoted this to me. And I will always be grateful to John King, who has since passed, who was one of my mentors, who said, here's what you have to do as soon as you're eligible. And so that's exactly what I did. I sat for the CFRE as soon as I was eligible, which at the time was at my 5-year professional mark. And I think to some of the points that Ashley mentioned earlier, it really was about demonstrating a commitment to fundraising as a career for me, because you can do this as a non-certified fundraiser. We all know that. But for me, it was an opportunity to say, no, I'm committed to this and I want to invest in my professional development. And not only did I want to invest in my professional development, but over the years, since I have recertified multiple times, the thing I appreciate about the CFRE process is the fact that you have to renew it. And that's actually why you notice that I also have an ACFRE. The ACFRE is a permanent credential. You don't have to recertify as an ACFRE. So when the ACFRE was first created, it was often promoted to people as, okay, this is a permanent credential, so you don't have to go through that recertification process. I've retained my CFRE since I got my ACFRE in 2010, and I've actually convinced other ACFREs to retain their CFRE, because I feel like one of the things that is valuable to me about the CFRE is that you have to demonstrate ongoing professional practice. You still have to invest in your professional development. You still have to raise money, which I do even though I'm a consultant. You still have to do the communications and management programs that you can also include in your professional practice application. So we want to make sure that you are continually developing and continuing to contribute to the body of knowledge, which is important to me. And that's why I've continued to retain my CFRE after all of these years. But I think the last piece that has been a benefit for me over my career is this piece about having conversations. And Ashley briefly mentioned earlier that this could trigger conversations with donors. I've had many conversations with donors about, hey, what are all these letters after your name on your business card? So I also have an MBA, so they usually are like, okay, we understand what those 3 letters are, but what are all these other things? And what I'm able to say is, for me, and for a conversation that I've had many, many times with Vern Snyder, who was one of my colleagues on the ACFRE board previously, is that when you enter the profession as a fundraiser, whether as a young person or someone who's doing a second or third career, that first conversation about this is a job it's just that. Maybe you just have to pay the rent. Maybe you just have to get food on the table. Maybe this is just a gig, essentially. But when you move forward with committing to the CFRE, you have demonstrated that this is a career. And that is the conversation I frequently have with donors, is that this is a career for me. And just to add a little extra layer, the ACFRE for me is okay, once you get to that level, this is now your calling. This is fundraising as part of your professional fundraising, as part of your DNA. And so that's kind of how I explain all of these different credentials with donors and other people I have conversations with. So I hope that was helpful. And I'm going to hand it back to Ashley.
That was very helpful, Alice. That was perfect. Thank you so much. And it's always great to hear from somebody who's had it for so long, because the fact that you've continued to renew, it's continued to bring value to your career, to your practice, to your education. That's exactly what we want in a credential, right? We want it to continue to serve us. So thank you so much. All right, and now it is my pleasure to introduce Tanya Rumble. Tanya is based in Ontario, Canada, and she became a CFRE, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe 2017. So we will turn it over to you, Tanya.
Thank you so much, and happy to be here. You can see from my title slide here that I love credentials, so it's no surprise that I found myself working towards my CFRE. And I think the first thing that I'll share, I think it's important to demonstrate some vulnerability in spaces such as this, is that the very first time that I took the exam, I did not pass. And so in a little bit of a later section, I'm going to share with you some of my tips. But in terms of the benefits that I've experienced with taking the CFRE and becoming a certified fundraising executive, the first, of course, is the increased credibility. I stumbled into fundraising from a prior career in public health, and I sometimes really dealt with imposter syndrome. I really didn't feel like I had a lot of the credibility to be fundraising and raising funds, rather than I actually used to be the one giving out the money when I worked in public health. And so for me, after spending 5 years in the sector, the the CFRE was basically a badge kind of demonstrating that I had the requisite skills, knowledge, core competencies, and understanding of the profession to be able to put that behind my name with a lot of confidence. And so I think it really, for me, demonstrated a lot of my knowledge and skills, and was that validation of all of that that I brought to the table. And it really increased my credibility with donors, but also, of course, with prospective employers. The second piece is that, as I said, for me, I stumbled into fundraising. I didn't take a prior course. I had not done a postgraduate course. I'd not done any formal education in the area of philanthropy or fundraising. And so the CFRE is a fantastic proxy for other credentials or qualifications. So in the absence of a degree or a diploma or any other formal education, whether it's fundraising specific or not, the CFRE can become your de facto credential as a way of demonstrating, listen, I have the ability to learn, I have the ability to understand, I test well, I can acquire new knowledge, I can unlearn bad practices. And it could be a fantastic way of saying, I may not have these other things that you're looking for, but usually pretty high on the list of job qualifications for fundraising roles is a CFRE or other education that's similar. And so it's a great stand-in in the absence of other specific knowledge and education that you've done in the area of fundraising. And then for me, I actually pursued the CFRE while I was doing more annual giving, third party events, and corporate partnerships. And I wanted to build my knowledge and skill and capacity in the area of major and planned giving. But it was really hard to break into those fields because I'd been working in primarily events and corporate fundraising for the first part of my fundraising career. And so it gave me a unique exposure to major and planned giving competencies, knowledge, and skills when I wasn't able to sort of get that experience on the job or dabble in that area. And so it allowed me to increase my knowledge in areas that I wasn't working in, and actually inspired me to transition from corporate and event fundraising into major gifts and planned giving. And so for me, the CFRE was really a super positive catalyst in being able to change the trajectory of my fundraising career. And I've really never looked back. I'll turn it back over to you, Ashley.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Tanya. It's great to hear your reasons, and many people do it to increase their knowledge in areas that they haven't worked in. All right, now we're going to dive in. First, we're going to look at the application, and then we're going to look at the exam. So, certification timeline. This is the order of operations, if you will, about how you make all this happen. First, you complete and submit your application, then we review it. Then once we've approved your application, we send you an email with information on how to schedule your exam. You make your testing appointment, and then when you take the exam and you pass, you are a CFRE, right? So super easy, very logical. If you haven't yet started your application, there are 2 places on our homepage where you can do it. And Paul, if you wouldn't mind, could you drop the link to start the application into the chat in case there's people that want to follow along? The application itself is looking at what you've done over the last 5 years. So effectively, it's December 5th, 2023. We are currently looking at January 1, 2018 forward. When we hit January of 2024, we will stop looking at 2018. That will expire off, and we'll be looking at 2019 forward. This will make a little more sense when we get into the next few slides. The application itself never expires. So you've created it 2 years ago, haven't logged in since, we still have it, you can still access it. You can log in and out of it as much as you want. You don't have to sit and do it all in one sitting. In fact, that's pretty difficult for most people to do. So we do recommend that you fill it out bit by bit. There are 3 main application sections, and the first one is education. The application works on a point system. And you're like, okay, what the heck is the point? You need 80 points to meet the education qualification, and there are a number of ways that you are going to earn those points. You very, very likely already have a number of these points. That is because you earn 1 point per hour that you're in fundraising instruction, right? You go on a 1-hour webinar about digital fundraising, it's 1 point. You go on a 5-hour masterclass about capital campaigns, it's 5 points. If you go to a conference and there are 11.5 hours of instruction time and you don't miss any sessions, right? You go to the full schedule, you've got 11.5 hours. So all of the fundraising education that you've done from 2018 through now all counts. If you ever present, and I did say if, it's not required to present. If you feel terrified about presenting, that's totally fine. You don't have to. If you do present, you will earn yourself 2 points per hour that you do that. So that's another great way to bank up points. And the first time you present new material, we award you 3 points per hour to take into account your time researching and putting that together. Because that usually involves expanding your knowledge base, right? When you put something together for the first time. If you have an academic degree, that's great. If you don't have an academic degree, that is also fine. It is not required. However, if you have an academic degree, we will award points. Academic degrees are the only thing that can be older than 5 years. Any year, any major. I have a bachelor's in English from 2002. I'm going to get 10 points for it. I also have a master's in advertising from 2005. I'm going to get another 10 points for that. I'm going to have 20 points out of that 80-point total from my academic degrees. We can take up to 40 points from academic degrees. So if you have a PhD, you're going to get PhD, master's, bachelor's. We award 5 for an associate's degree. All right, so keep that in mind. It's a great way to work towards that points requirement if you've already earned a degree. We can also accept relevant non-fundraising education. Relevant education is anything that's going to feed into your success in fundraising. Okay, and I don't mean yoga that will make you more chilled out. That's not what we're talking about. A management class, leadership class, public speaking, business writing, all of these are things that can qualify. So we can take up to 10 points or 10 hours of you attending relevant non-fundraising education. We also have service learning. This isn't required, but you can earn points from it if it applies to you. Service learning is simply our term for volunteering. You will earn yourself 1 point per year per organization that you volunteer with. So let's say you are a volunteer with an organization where you wrap toys around the holidays for a couple of weekends. That's going to earn you 1 point per year for your work with that organization. We know a lot of volunteer opportunities don't run 12 months out of the year. I totally get that. So some are seasonal, some are just a couple of days. It's going to count. We can also award you 2 points per year per org where you are on a committee or board. This qualifies if you volunteer with your local AFP chapter, maybe you're on the National Philanthropy Day Committee. All of those good things, they are going to earn you service learning points. All right, now, what is the #1 application mistake that we see? It is when people do not correctly calculate their time in education. This is especially prevalent when people are looking at the conferences they've attended. Let's say I go on a one-day conference from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and I think, heck yeah, I just got myself 8 education points. We have to subtract out morning coffee, afternoon coffee, lunch, exhibit hall time. We're only looking at the time that is actually fundraising education related. So keep that in mind, that you will want to save a copy of the agenda from the event to make sure that you have correctly calculated those points. If you say, Ashley, I attended a conference 3 years ago, how on earth am I going to find this information? Inside the application, we have a section called approved providers, and there is some information there from people or organizations in our approved provider program who provide fundraising education, right? And they've preloaded their stuff. So what that means is if you went to AFP Icon last year, you can find it and it'll tell you exactly how many points it was worth. So that is a great port of call to double check how many points you've earned for various prior activities in education. All right, so we are almost, well, we're done with the education section. We're going to look at the 2 final application sections and then the exam shortly. Paul, have we had any questions come in?
Yeah, we've had a lot of great questions come in.
Awesome.
So I'll just pick a few and then save the rest for later. So we'll start with somebody had a question about points. If they had excessive points in one category, could that make up for lack of points in another category?
Yes, so if they're asking if they had more than 80 points in education, but maybe not enough points in another area, unfortunately, that would not work. We have an accrediting body, right? We're accredited, and they say that everybody must meet these same standards. So unfortunately, we can't chop and change.
Great, thanks. This question is for Tanya. So Tanya, in what way did having your CFRE help you learn about major gifts?
Okay, sure. Thanks, Paul. Well, again, I was working in the area of third-party events, event fundraising, and corporate partnerships, and I wasn't finding it was easy for me to be able to make that transition into major and planned giving. And I worked in a large organization that had a major gifts team, but it wasn't sort of the thing, sort of the de rigueur where I could sort of say, "Hey, could I volunteer to like come on a major gifts call with you?" And so, in learning and being exposed to the major gifts content within the CFRE exam and all the testing material, I became much more aware of the architecture of a major gifts cultivation process, solicitation process, stewardship process, and some of the general kind of like best practices and underpinnings of competencies of a successful major gifts fundraiser. So it just gave me a lot of exposure to the mechanics and operations within a major gift shop that I wasn't really going to be able to get exposure to in my day-to-day work. I hope that helps.
Thank you. And this question, I believe, is for Jillian. So Jillian, someone asked earlier, what was your process of preparing for the exam? What resources did you use? And a general question, what should those in the US focus on since this is an international certification? So maybe we can answer the third part of that question, but the first 2 parts, what did you do to prepare for the exam and what resources did you use?
Yeah, so the Compass guidebook was huge. What I really loved about that was it's broken up into sections that cover the domains on the test, but it also has a pre and a post section. And what I mean by that is things that really helping you get into the mindset as you prepare for your studying. So everyone studies and prepares differently. I know for myself, when I was in college, everything that I did was really paper based or project based. And so I couldn't even remember the last time I took a standardized test. So it was really helpful in getting into that mindset and creating my own study plan. What I did was when I was accepted that I was able to take the exam. I chose an exam date. So yes, I did choose Friday the 13th. That was my fault. And I broke it out week by week, coming up with a game plan for myself to say, so this week I'm going to focus on this, and this is how I'm going to do it. I also mention it when I get towards the end, but the biggest part that helped me was finding a study group. There aren't many of us doing this in Maine, so I wasn't able to find a local group or anything like that. Even our AFP chapter is made up of several different states. So I did end up finding a virtual study group that I joined twice, and then we ended up having a spin-off study group from that where we would get together over lunch and just talk about things that, you know, we had questions on that we were having trouble with. And again, it's different for everyone. So something that, you know, was a little trickier for me was really easy for someone else. And just having those conversations helped me immensely. The other thing that I did was I got myself a copy of the 5th edition of Achieving Excellence in Fundraising. We went through that a lot during my study groups, and I read it myself. And at the beginning, I would go through and I would highlight the parts that really stuck out to me. And then the last few weeks before my exam, I went through it and just reviewed the highlighted portions, and that helped me. I also made myself some flashcards based on what I reviewed in the Compass study guide, and those went with me everywhere. They were in my purse. If I had a few minutes in between calls or in between meetings at work, I would go through them. On the weekend, if I was driving somewhere with my family, my husband would drive, so I could kind of review them. Things like that, just always having it top of mind, were really what helped me the most.
Perfect, thank you. To answer the third part of that question, what should those in the US focus on since this is an international certification? Ashley, do you want to answer that part?
I'm going to hold off on that until we get to the exam section. And then we'll circle back. Yeah, I think that'll cover it well. Well, thank you so much, Paul, for sharing those questions with us, and keep them coming. We have plenty of time to get to them. We want to make sure that you get all of the information that you need. I'm also in the chat going to drop a link. Jillian mentioned the 5th edition of Achieving Excellence in Fundraising. This is one of the most popular books that people use when they prepare for the exam. So I've just dropped the link to Amazon on there. Sometimes it's on sale randomly. All right, now before we move into the next section of the application, we're going to do a really quick poll. Let's see if it's going to launch. How long have you been professionally fundraising? So fewer than 3 years, 3 to 4 years, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, 15 plus. I'm gonna close this poll in 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. All right, and let's take a look. Can you see the results there? All right, so it looks like we've got people actually all over the board. A lot of people in 5 to 9 years and above. Okay, great. Well, that sets us up very well for the next section here, which is professional practice. Professional practice is the time that you've been working. That's the best way to think about it, the easiest way to think about it. And you need to have worked for 36 months out of the most recent 5 years in a paid professional fundraising role. That's all you need to remember for this one. So everybody who had more than 3 years, if that has been accomplished in the last 5 years, you've already met this requirement. For people with fewer than 3 years experience, you are 100% in the right place. A number of people work on their application. As soon as they hit 3 years, they hit submit, because the sooner you get the CFRE in your career, the sooner you're going to enjoy the benefits of it. A lot of people like to earn it early in their career because they want that salary lift. Once your salary is up here, it's a lot easier to keep it up here, right? So if you have that in your back pocket when you go to negotiate for your next job after you become a CFRE, earlier in your career, you're going to really be able to make a salary difference for yourself overall. It's on a point system. 1 month equals 1 point, 36 points. That's how it works. If you don't fundraise 100% of the time in your job, let's say you wear the marketing hat 50% of the time and the fundraising hat the other 50%. That's totally fine. We completely understand that. So if you work full-time, just at least 50% of your role must be fundraising related. All right, the last application section we're going to talk about here is professional performance. This is you raising funds, right? This is what you do all day, every day. You need to have earned or brought in the equivalent of about 1.375 million US dollars over 5 years. And you're thinking, this is a global credential. Why is this in US dollars? We are accredited, and our accrediting body only allows us to have one currency. If you're outside the US, you're in Canada, the UK, wherever, we have a currency converter in the application for you to make it easy. So just know that. And we look at your fundraising as a team sport. We know that if Jillian, Tanya, Alice, and myself were all working on a fundraising event and it brought in $500,000, there's no way to say, well, Ashley brought in this amount, Tanya brought in this amount, right? Because we are on this group effort and we're all contributing to it. Another example would be if you worked on a direct mail piece together, right? We know that there are things like that that you just can't parse out by person. Now, if I do, let's say, major gifts, and I sit next to somebody who does legacies bequests, and that person next to me closes $1 million bequest, I cannot claim that for myself, right? Because I wasn't part of that project, part of that ask. So it does need to be what you've actually worked on yourself. All right. If you work in a smaller shop and you can't meet this requirement, we do have a way that you can meet it through communications and management projects. Alice had mentioned that a little bit earlier. That is a great way if you are earlier in your career or in a smaller organization that you can meet this requirement. So don't think, well, I'm in a small place, there's no way I'm going to make that. We do have a way that we can work with you on that. How much does all this cost? So if you are a member of a participating organization that is AFP, AHP, Canadian Association of Gift Planners, Charitable Gift Planners, we have a full list of 30 in the About section of our website. If you are a member of any of those organizations, one of your member benefits is that you get 20% off the cost of the CFRE. You get a preferred rate of $700 US dollars. If you are not a member of a participating organization, it is $875 US dollars. These are the only two prices. So if you say, Ashley, I'm a member of AHP, AFP, and CGP, can I get 20% and another 20? No, we can't do that, unfortunately. It would be great if we could, but we just have $700 US dollars and $875 US dollars. That fee is inclusive of us reviewing your application, all testing fees. So when you're ready to test, you will not be asked to pay anything at the test center. You're not going to pay anything to book your exam. It's all included. When you become a CFRE, you get a digital badge. You may have seen people use these on LinkedIn and Twitter to announce their CFRE achievement. They're really popular. It's a great way to let your network know, I've done it. And that fee also includes the printing and mailing of your certificate worldwide. All right, so we're going to move into the exam. So before we get to anything about the exam, are there any lingering application questions, Paul?
Yeah, so I do have a question for Tanya, if you don't mind. I didn't get to ask this during our last break. So what tips do you have to pass the test since you took it twice?
I think that's a good question. That's a preview for what I'll be speaking to, but I'm happy to answer it briefly. So I didn't pass the first time, and I don't think I'm the only one that this has happened to. I'm sure Paul could probably tell you the percentage wise, but I just think it's important to demystify failure and normalize that. For me, I chose to do the test alone without taking a study group or prep course the first time. And I really thought that my knowledge and just independent reading of materials would be sufficient. but it's important that you prep for the test, and not just for what you think in practice is what is best practice. This is truly the empirical, evidence-based practice of fundraising that the test is based on. And so what we sometimes do in practice doesn't align with the testing materials, because it's not always best practice what we're doing within our various fundraising organizations. And so taking the CFRE prep course through my local AFP chapter, and then forming a study group thereafter, was absolutely the linchpin for me in terms of how I was able to, move from not passing and just, missing the pass rate by only a few points, to being able to pass with flying colors the next time round. So I strongly recommend a prep course and a study group to help bolster you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So here's some general application questions. How long does the application review process take once it's submitted?
It usually just takes a couple of business days. And I'm going to just say, I looked at the clock, and unfortunately, we've got the exam to get through. So I'm going to say I'm sorry that we had to cut this question break short, but we'll keep it moving, and then we'll jump into the exam. Keep all of your questions coming, though, on the back end. Paul and Christine will be glad to help you with those. So when it comes time to take the exam, you have two options for how to take it. You can either take it in person at a Pearson VUE Test Center, or you can take it from your home or office. We highly recommend that you go to the test center, because statistically you have a higher chance of passing the exam when you go. We get all of the data back for both formats of the exam. The exam is the exact same no matter where you take it, but the exam center is designed to be distraction-free. And you also never want to be the man who took the CFRE exam from home, and with 9 questions left, his home internet went out. That did happen to a candidate. The exam is offered during 4 annual test windows. When we approve your application, you are able to sit for the exam in any test window up to 1 year from the date that it's approved. If you submit your application in December, you will have your pick of the 2024 testing days. You will be able to sit for the exam in any day of any test window next year that you like. You'll be getting it early, and you'll give yourself a real advantage there. This is important because at the test center, people are taking all kinds of exams, right? It's not just the CFRE. If you're a morning person and that's when your brain is sharpest, you want to get a morning slot. You don't want to put off securing your test date and find out that it's just the afternoon is available, right? So it makes a lot of sense to think ahead. When can you professionally take time to study? When will things not be too manic at, with your family life? And then pick your date that you want to study and work backwards on your study plan. The exam covers 6 knowledge domains that you see here on your screen. We are very transparent about what the exam covers. You can see here that securing the gift and relationship building make up just over half the exam. You're going to want to make sure that you prepare thoroughly, and you absolutely want to be sure that you invest time in those 2 areas. It's very important to help you be successful. On our website, you'll find the test content outline. This is the directory, if you will, of everything the exam covers under those 6 knowledge domains. This really breaks down the nitty-gritty. Like I said, we're very transparent about what the exam covers, and you can find this on our website as a downloadable PDF. Some people think, well, thanks, Ashley, but I've taken a look at this and it's still hard for me to know. I'm having difficulty evaluating myself, right? So think about it this way. Look at the test content outline and highlight everything that you have not directly worked in, or that you don't feel confident you can answer an exam question about. That's going to really help you decide where you need to focus. The exam focuses on best practices, not rote memorization of facts. So if you are someone who hasn't worked in a certain area, what you're going to be thinking about is the best practices, not I need to memorize 20 definitions about major donors, right? We have a number of online resources to help support you as you take the exam. Like I said, I know a lot of people have anxiety about it, but I want to remind you that this is what you do. This is your chosen career, that you are never smarter or wiser than you have been in this moment with all of your great experience. Our online resources include the candidate handbook and the test content outline. We also have a glossary. You do not have to memorize those definitions. The glossary is the language of the exam. It will ensure that you are comfortable with all the terms before you see them. And if you're worried, okay, this is a global exam, is there going to be some kind of word on there that I just haven't encountered yet? This will take away all of the anxiety about that, so you'll know precisely what the questions are asking you. We have a resource reading list. So when Jillian mentioned Achieving Excellence in Fundraising 5th edition, that is one of the 9 books on that list. Most people read 1 to 3. You do not need to read all 9 books. We also offer a practice exam. This is really popular. The practice exam has a bank of 320 questions, including questions retired off of prior CFRE exams. So no question in the practice exam is on the current live exam. This is a great way to just get back in that test taking rhythm. The questions have 4 answer options, just like the live ones do. So you'll get back into the groove of multiple choice testing. Then again, we've talked about it a few times. We have the CFRE Exam Compass Study Guide. This is a great resource, especially if you like a workbook style. If you don't want to pay for the practice exam or the study guide, that's totally fine. You don't have to use those, but they are 2 preparation tools that we have available for you. All right, so how to make a study plan. Everyone always says, Ashley, I haven't studied in forever. Well, the best way to do it is to really pick times of the week and commit to that being when you study, right? It's a real fallacy when we think, I'll just study with whatever time is left over this week. It does take a little bit of prioritization. Some CFREs really like to study on their lunch hour because they think, I'm going to just shut my IM off, turn off my email, and this is going to be an uninterrupted hour for me. You're going to know the knowledge domains you want to brush up on when you looked at that test content outline. You'll select the books that will address any gaps in your fundraising knowledge. 4 of the books are comprehensive. So if you just want to read one book and have all your bases covered, you can find that on the resource reading list on our website. I always like setting a weekly page goal. That helps me keep track. Okay, am I really working towards this? Do I need to amp it up? And it sounds really obvious about finding a calm, quiet place to study, but that is often not at home. So keep that in mind. The exam has 200 questions and they're all multiple choice with 4 answer options per question. You are going to provide the best answer for the best practice. You are not telling us how your organization fundraises, right? Some people answer the exam for how they do it at their job. This is testing your competency in ethical best practice fundraising. All right, so the exam is completely computer-based and it's global. It's the same no matter where in the world you sit for it. You have 4 hours to take the exam, and good news for you, most people finish in about 2 hours and 45 minutes. We are very generous in the amount of time that you have to take the exam. You won't feel pressured, you shouldn't feel rushed. Everything on it ties back to that test content outline, so nothing is going to be coming at you from left field. You can also move backwards and forwards inside the exam, which is awesome because if you get really stumped on question 15, but question 88 jogs your memory, you can go back. You want to answer every question. Don't leave anything blank. You're gaining points for what you get correct, right? So you're not necessarily penalized for an incorrect answer. All right, we are going to look at a quick practice question that does not appear on the current exam. You don't have to tell me your answer, you can just keep it in the back of your mind. When a donor wishes to make a planned gift/bequest to the endowment fund, the fundraising officer should first, 1, offer to contact the donor's financial organization and advisor. 2, explore what the donor wishes to accomplish with the gift. 3, identify and share with the donor the organization's future needs. And 4, introduce the donor to various plan giving options. All right. Does everybody have their answer in mind? All right, and it's to explore what the donor wishes to accomplish with the gift. That's the ethical best practice. You are not steering the donor one way or the other. It is the donor that is coming to you with their philanthropic intent. The exam is scored from 200 to 800, and 500 is the pass mark. That's great. You don't have to have 100% on the exam. Some people think, oh my gosh, I can't get anything wrong. I have to have 100%. You don't have to have 100%, right? You need to have 500 to pass, and it's not graded on a curve. Alice mentioned recertification. That happens every 3 years. I'm going to just let you look at this slide when you get the deck in the email tomorrow, because we have 4 minutes left and we have a couple slides to go. So our CFREs are going to come back, and I'm going to just say, if you can do 30 seconds on your slide, that would be great. And then maybe we'll have a couple minutes at the end for any Q&A. So Alice, what is your advice for someone considering pursuing their CFRE?
Sure. So the first thing I would say is you have to decide if the CFRE is the right thing. And there are 3 general categories of things you can choose from. And you could get a degree, a certificate, or a credential. And there's been some information in the Q&A about people with certificates who have nonprofit specific certificates or nonprofit specific degrees. Those are all great. I don't think you have to choose one of these things. You could get all of them. Like Tanya is going to do. But you can do all of these things, and you need to decide if that credential is the right thing for you. The other thing I would say is start your application even if you're not sure. If you have 1 year of experience or less, start your application, because it's free, as Ashley has already mentioned, and it's a great way to document your professional practice as well as your professional development. So you don't have to hit submit. If you just want to start doing this and you realize halfway through, this is not for me, that's okay. But you have the documentation for what you've done. And the third tip that I would give you is tell someone you're going to do it. Now, some of you are going to freak out and say, no, I don't want to tell anyone that I'm doing this. I want it to keep it a secret in case I fail. But, to Tanya's point earlier about, normalizing that process, it's okay if it doesn't go perfectly, if it doesn't go completely smoothly. But what I've discovered in my own personal experience is that if I tell someone I'm going to do something, I'm more apt to move forward with it. So those are my 3 points of advice.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alice. And Jillian, 30 seconds. Sorry, we're in this little time crunch.
No worries, I can talk fast. So my first point is really get out of your own way. If you struggle with that, I do. I had this credential placed on such a pedestal, which it's absolutely worthy of, but it's also attainable. And the one thing that I really want to share here, because again, I know my situation is not unique. I work full time, which nonprofit math, full time for us most of the time is more than 40 hours a week. I have 2 young kids. They are 3 and 4 years old. I don't even know the amount of hours that collects into a week, but I got my studying in. It is doable. It is attainable. You are in this profession. Trust yourself. You can do this. And if you're here, you already have the motivation to do it. The other one is connect with a CFRE ambassador. I went onto the CFRE International website and saw that that was an option. And I emailed, I believe it went to Ashley, and she connected me with someone who we met virtually and we just talked. She told me about what was helpful for her, gave me little tidbits of advice. And it was just great. And I'm a CFRE ambassador. I think Tanya and Alice are as well. Don't want to speak for them, but absolutely reach out and connect with someone. They're there to be your mentor through this. And then join a study group. I cannot stress this one enough. I honestly don't know that I would have passed without it. It not only breaks down the domains, but it gets you into the mindset of how to take the test and how to, get you out of your head. In one of the breakout ones that we had, we actually did start going through some of the practice exams. and flashcards together. And that just understanding how the questions are asked is just so invaluable. And the best part of all these things is that, you know, getting a CFRE ambassador and joining a study group, they're free.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jillian. All right. And Tanya, 30 seconds.
Last but not
Sorry.
least, I already said this. So the study group and the prep course were absolutely really like transformative for my experience. And I definitely agree with my colleagues. Certainly have some accountability and have an accountability buddy to check in with you to see how you're doing with your course prep and what you've committed to yourself. Because ultimately you're committing this to yourself, no one else. And so having someone external that just checks in with you to see how you're doing, I think can be really, really helpful in keeping you on track. Prep for the questions because you need to be understanding the way in which the questions are framed. And remember, this is based on best practice, not what you think your organization would do. And particularly prep for areas that you're not as strong in. If you go through a couple of test exams and you're doing really, really well in certain areas and you're consistently challenged in a couple of areas, make sure you really bolster yourself with additional reading and prep time on the areas where you're just not naturally inclined to be able to answer those questions correctly because you don't have as much experience in that area. Best of luck to all of you, and certainly connect with me and my colleagues on LinkedIn for a little bit of encouragement along your CFRE journey.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and a big thank you to Jillian, Alice, and Tanya for sharing their insight and wisdom as you look to achieve your goal of becoming a CFRE next year. Don't hesitate to get in touch with us at succeed@cfre.org. I'll just put that up real quick. That is going to be the email where you can reach out with questions, something comes to you later. And don't forget also that you will be receiving a link and the slides to this within 24 hours, and you have earned yourself 1 point in the non-fundraising education section. Thank you so much for being with us. Have a great rest of your week.